Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Vicki Johnson. I'm starting the webinar link a little bit early to help people get in early. We had a lot of registrants for this particular event, so I just wanted to open up the link a little bit early. If you're watching this as a recorded replay, I would fast forward maybe about 4 minutes because we're going to sit here quietly for a few minutes to help people get onto the link. So come on in. If you're watching the replay, please fast forward just a few minutes. All right, come on in, come on in. It's good to see everyone. As I mentioned, we just started this a little bit early because we had more than 700 registrants. So we have limited spots. We want to make sure that anyone who was excited to get in could get in early. But like I said, if you're watching this as a recording later in the day, make sure that you just fast forward a few minutes because we're just going to come on in and get settled. Also, if you want in the meantime, feel free to say hi in the chat. Let us know where you're from. Oh, Johnny's already here. Yay. Yeah, come say hi in the chat. Tell us where you're logging in from. I love to see where people are logging in from all over the world. And we will start right on the hour because I always have a lot to cover. So it's good to see everyone. Come on in and thank you. I'll just say thank you in advance for anyone who filled out the pre-event questionnaire. That was really helpful to see what kind of programs people are looking for. So come on in, make yourself comfortable. We're going to begin in about 3 minutes. And actually, while we're sitting here in the chat, you can tell us which program are you targeting? What type of program are you going to target? I'm going to ask again a little bit in a few minutes here, but I love to see what type of master's or doctoral program folks are targeting. And hopefully everyone is going to have some success today finding 5 programs or more that they can start to look at more closely that offer full funding. So come on in. All right, we got people from all over the world. Fantastic. All right. Hey, Carrie from the Philly area. I grew up around there. We got people from Texas, Barcelona, Sri Lanka. All right. Sierra Leone, Bangladesh. All right. Ontario, Nigeria, DC. Awesome. Come on in. Oh, people are starting to share lots of things in the chat. This is great. We're going to begin in about 1 minute. Again, if you're watching the replay, just fast forward a little bit further. There'll just be 5 minutes of us getting settled in, but we already have a good number of people here. Some people will be joining after the hour, I'm sure, but you guys were able to secure your spot, so that's great. Come on and get settled. Feel free to say hi in the chat. All right. All right, people from California, from India. Oh, thanks, Stacy. Stacy's looking for a fully funded PhD in creative writing. All right, Christopher, hello. Nina from Boston, hello, good to see you. All right, Audrey's here from Tampa, Florida. Fantastic. Come on in, come on in. And hopefully people know that they need to refresh their link to get in. Sometimes people miss the beginning. All right, come on in. All right, we have what looks like nearly 100 people here already. So for you early joiners, I'm going to get started because I do have a lot to cover. I want to make sure I can get through it all in the next 90 minutes. If you have registered for how to find 5 or more fully funded graduate programs to achieve your career goals, you are in the right place. Today's workshop is a 90-minute workshop. We're going to get interactive. And I'm going to show you a couple of ways that you can find fully funded master's and doctoral programs in your field. Just some intros. My full name is Dr. Vicki Johnson. Feel free to call me Vicki. I'm the founder and director of ProFellow, which is the world's leading online resource for information on professional and academic fellowships and fully funded graduate programs. I'm also the creator of the award-winning fully funded course and mentorship program, which has helped hundreds of people get into top programs offering full funding, which has resulted in $20 million in full funding for the folks that have been through my program. So I have a lot of key strategies and ideas to share with you today. So I'm glad you're here in this free event. Now, maybe you're here today because you need to get a master's or doctoral degree to advance in your current career, in your current job, or even to change careers. And certainly that was the case for me earlier in my career. I was working in the field of public health policy in DC, and I realized that to be able to apply for higher level jobs, senior analyst positions, I really needed a graduate degree. And virtually everyone in DC seemed to have a graduate degree. So that was a goal early in my career, which would help accelerate my career track. But you might also be here too because you just want to get a master's or doctoral degree. Maybe you want to advance your knowledge and your expertise and your skills. For some of you, pursuing academic excellence could be a key goal. You might be the first in your family to achieve a graduate degree. And for some of you, this might be a lifelong dream. Certainly for me, getting my PhD was a lifelong dream. But something may be holding you back from going to graduate school or even just applying to graduate school. So I do want to know in the chat, if you haven't already, introduce yourself, let us know where you're from. But I'd like to know what type of degree would you like to achieve? And I want to see, I know usually I have a very broad group of people here looking for masters, looking for doctoral degrees in all sorts of disciplines. And actually, this is going to be a very interdisciplinary event. Doesn't matter what discipline you're in. So let us know what type of degree would you like to achieve? And thank you. Some people already were putting this in there. Let me go back. I got to scroll back a little bit. David was looking at a master's in literature, culture, and media. Okay, very good. Doing creative writing. All right. Oh, Aaliyah joined my Fulbright workshop. Great. And ready to go back to school. Well, you're in the right place. Good to see you, Aaliyah. All right. Johnny is looking to start a master's in the UK this autumn, but also thinking about the PhD as the next step. Very good. Okay. And then Askarian's looking for the PhD in international development. Wonderful. Let me see who else has their disciplines in here. Oh, Mark says looking for anything in the field of counseling or counseling psychology. Great. All right. Lots of people. Oh, we have 2 people from North Carolina, Venezuela. And Zayla wants to do a PhD in the history of art. Wonderful. Let's see. Who else is here? Mashoud is looking for a PhD in environmental science. Mehrab is looking for a master's or PhD in development studies, public policy, or human science development. Fantastic. Someone's looking for a PhD in food and environmental engineering. Okay, Abdullah's looking at the DRPH. Ed D's, I see a JD PhD, PhD in computational design. Okay, fantastic. Okay, so we've got lots of disciplines here, and we can cover all of these disciplines today. I'm going to show you how to find programs in your specific area of interest. But what I want to talk about today is the funding as well. So not just finding programs in our discipline, but finding the funding, because here's the reality. As you might know, if you've done some research, if you go into a non-funded master's or doctoral program, you're going to be taking out quite a bit of money in student debt. So a non-funded 2-year master's degree in the US is going to cost you $75,000 or more, which most of us take out in student debt. A non-funded 5-year doctoral degree is going to cost you $250,000 or more. And I just looked up the stats on these types of programs. Actually, the average amount of student debt for a master's student is actually over $80,000. The average amount for a doctoral student is over $180,000. These are not small amounts of money. And sometimes because so many people are taking out student debt, we're not really thinking about the impact to our long-term financial well-being. This is what your future student debt burden will look like. So at the master's level, let's say you take out $75,000 in student debt. That is equivalent to $1,000 or more per month for the next 10 years. At the doctorate level, if you pay for that out of pocket, racking up about $250,000 in student debt, that's $1,500 or more for the next 20 years. So before you start going down this track of the non-funded graduate degree and hoping you can pay for it through student debt, I want you to keep in mind how this burden is going to impact your career, your job choices, and other parts of your financial well-being, your ability to afford a home, save for retirement, save for children's education. This is a huge amount of money. And in the United States, we have a massive student debt crisis. The thing is, you can achieve a high quality graduate degree debt-free. And I know this because I did this myself, and I've now helped hundreds of people get ushered into fully funded programs that they will be able to get their degree without student debt. Now, during this presentation, you're going to learn a couple things. Number one, we're going to talk about what fully funded graduate programs are. Number two, we're going to talk about 3 specific strategies to find fully funded master's and doctoral programs in your discipline. And number 3, I'm also going to share at the end the Match Me formula, which is the 7 elements of a winning application. This is the formula that I teach in my workshops and courses for applicants to graduate school and fellowships. This formula has been highly effective in getting people into these programs. The funded programs are pretty competitive, but so we're going to talk about that as well. How do we get into the programs? Now, you're going to get a lot of information in this presentation. Make sure to take some notes. I am going to be sending out a replay later today if you need to leave early, but take some notes. This is going to get pretty interactive. And I also would encourage you, if you can, to stay into the end, because I am going to walk you through. We're going to fill out the workbook that I sent out to start documenting schools that you can apply for. I'm going to answer some of the common questions that were sent in the pre-event questionnaire and give some application tips. Also, I am going to share some information about my fully funded course and mentorship program. If this is like on a scale of 1 to 10, if it's a 10 that you want to get into graduate school and get in with full funding, this program is a program that has an extremely high success rate. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the program, and there's going to be a special enrollment bonus today for people who enrolled during the webinar. Now, for some of you, you may have heard of this program before if you've been in my other events. Some of you might be hearing about this program for the first time. In either case, stay till the end, learn a little bit more if you want to, and you'll learn more about how I help people get into these programs. Now, let me tell you a little bit about myself. Early in my career, I worked in the field of public health policy and emergency management. And so I did earn my Master of Science in Public Health at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. I did pay for that with student debt, and it took me 15 years to pay off the student debt that I accrued. And it wasn't even as much as the amounts that it would be today. This is quite some time ago. Later, in my mid-30s, I earned my PhD fully funded. That means I received a $250,000 funding award that covered my tuition and gave me a stipend. And I was able to achieve the PhD without student debt. So between the time that I earned my master's and the time that I earned my PhD, I learned where graduate school funding comes from. I didn't know this information early in my career. Now, because I came across this information, I also realized that I'm one of millions of people that don't know how to find these funding awards or the right terminology. I founded ProFellow as a PhD student so that I could share this funding information on a huge scale. If you've never used profellow.com, our social enterprise website, there is a massive free open access database that lists more than 2,500 fellowship programs as well as fully funded graduate programs. So there's funding for professional development, graduate school, research, international experiences, and so forth. So I'm going to encourage you after this presentation to check that out if you haven't already. This work, we've been doing this for 10 years, so I have been dubbed the nation's expert on fellowships and funding, and I'm just giggling a little bit. There is a picture of me on the screen if you can't see it. They put my face up on the big Times Square billboard, digital billboard downtown. I was honored by my work with ProFellow by NASDAQ. And so we've been able to scale even more and help more and more people find these funding awards. Also in 2019, I did launch the fully funded course and mentorship program so that I could work with candidates more in depth and really walk you through step by step, every step in this process of from finding schools, finding funding, preparing a truly exceptional application, and then negotiating your funding offer. So we've had hundreds of success stories from that program. So the fully funded course, which I'm going to share some of the strategies I teach in that course today, this has helped people win $20 million in funding since 2019. And it is my personal life mission to help millions of people like you achieve funding for your career adventure. So not just graduate school, but also other types of professional development, leadership development, and so forth. So we want to make information about funding really accessible. So I'm glad you're here in this event today. Now, let me tell you a little bit about my personal story with funding. So about 5 years after my undergraduate studies, like I said, I was working in the field of public health and emergency management, and I was working in policy. I started to look for funding for graduate school when I realized I was hitting a little bit of a career ceiling, or that I really needed a graduate degree. But I was using the internet to try to find funding awards, and I was doing what a lot of people still do. I was looking for scholarships, financial aid. I was looking kind of for those terms. I did find a couple of small awards, $1,000 here, $5,000 there, but those particular scholarships weren't really geared to someone from my background. And so I really came to the conclusion that there really was no significant funding for grad school, and that I was going to have to pay for this out of pocket. So due to my cost calculations, I completely ruled out the idea of doing a doctoral degree. I'd always wanted to do a PhD. I love to learn. I was quite a studious student early on, but I thought there's absolutely no way I could pay for a 5-year graduate degree. So I decided that I would only apply for master's programs, and also I would only apply for dream schools, because I was going to take out the full amount in student debt. So it really had to be worth that financial investment. Now, at this stage, actually, as some of you know, I earned a couple of fellowships early in my career, and I became really, really good at the application story. I used those skills and I got into some top schools, despite the fact that I didn't have the highest undergraduate GPA. I didn't have the highest GRE scores. I was actually below average on both of those points. But I applied my preparation and application storytelling to get into some really top programs. I got into Georgetown University, Columbia University, Johns Hopkins University, and the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, which is the top public health school in Europe. But maybe because I wasn't maybe the top candidate for these programs, I didn't get any scholarships from these universities. I didn't get any external scholarships either. So I really was now having to choose the best, the program that I could afford. So I had to choose, out of all of those schools, I had to choose the program that was cheapest, quote unquote. And because the London School was just a 1-year program and the tuition was a little bit cheaper, I chose to go to the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, because overall it was going to be the cheapest. But even to do this 1-year program, I had to take out 5 figures in student debt. And when I was living in London, I worked 20 hours per week in a call center while I was a student. So there's a picture on the screen of someone with a call center headset on. They look totally tired, defeated. This is exactly how I felt during my master's studies. I was in this very rigorous Master of Science program. I'm trying to work 20 hours a week in a call center, which is quite demoralizing work. And I was doing all this in order to get my master's. Now, this is where a lot of people are. You're thinking, can I work while going to graduate school? Taking out tons of student debt to pay for it, all with maybe the hopes that this degree will help me make more money or change careers. But this is not what I'm going to recommend to you today, this idea of working and in a job that is not going to be suited to your graduate studies, or taking out tons of student debt. The problem is I missed some really great opportunities to fund my master's degree, or even potentially go directly into a PhD early in my career. Several years later, in my mid-30s, a professor that I was doing some research in my professional work, and a professor tapped me and said, "You should enter the PhD program at Massey University." And I said, no. There's absolutely no way I'm taking out money at this stage of my career. I didn't really need a PhD at this point. But I was able to earn my PhD fully funded. He said that, well, Vicki, if you get into this PhD program, you're going to get a full funding package, which means you're going to get your full tuition waived, and you're going to get an annual living stipend of $25,000 per year. I was like, say what? When I did the math around this full funding package, I realized that that was a $250,000 funding offer. So literally someone was going to pay me to go and do my PhD. Now, that was the first time in my mid-30s that I had ever heard of full funding. So a light bulb went off in my head. I figured, okay, if I was somebody who had done fellowships and was kind of considered in the know about funding, and I had not heard of full funding, that means lots of other people had not heard about this phenomenon. But the thing is, it was only by chance that I had learned about this through a professor. So I really have done a lot of work now to understand where this funding comes from and how you can access it. The full funding that I received at Massey University was not unique to me or even to Massey University. It turns out there's thousands of programs that offer full funding at the graduate level. So let's start talking about the funding and where we can find it. So where do I begin? Okay. Now, what is a fully funded program? A fully funded program is a graduate program that gives all, or at least most of the accepted students, a full funding package at acceptance. That's what they call it, a full funding package. Full funding is the full tuition waiver and, in addition, the annual living stipend. And these living stipends range anywhere from about $15,000 to $45,000 per year. And this funding comes from the university. And sometimes these packages have other potential perks like subsidized housing, subsidized childcare. Often there is health insurance included in that. You might also get other types of perks. People in STEM sometimes get a free computer or other things. But when you hear full funding, that means the full tuition waiver and an annual living stipend. Now, why do universities give away this money? Well, universities, and in particular research universities, receive money from grants, trusts, corporations, and the government to conduct research. So while there are some universities out there that only exist to teach courses and grant degrees, that's true. But there is also a large number of universities that, in addition to granting degrees and teaching, they do research, and they get big grants to do this research. So to support these humongous grants that are run by the faculty, the university will use some of that grant funding to create graduate assistantships, which are part-time research and teaching jobs that are exclusively for graduate students, and they are exclusively for people who are studying full-time and on campus. So this is, you're coming in as a full-time student, and you get this part-time job that gives you the full funding package. Now, when you get a graduate assistantship through one of these graduate programs, that means for something like a 2-year master's program, that can be around $75,000 or more in value. So you're getting the free tuition, which at this stage is tens of thousands of dollars, plus that stipend. So likewise, at the PhD level, when you're doing a doctoral degree, that's like a $250,000 funding award. So yes, it's like being paid to go to graduate school. Now, graduate assistantships are a primary source of full funding for graduate students, but not all graduate programs offer assistantships. So this was the key thing that I did not know early in my career, that there's actually a big distinction between programs that offer these assistantships and those that don't. So number one, we know first that graduate assistantships are like a part-time job. You're supporting faculty with teaching or research. And then secondly, they have to exist in programs, mostly in universities that have research. There are a number of degrees that typically do not offer funding through assistantships or even other sources. And these are what I call professional degrees. So there's not really a research component to these degrees. So in the world of professional doctorates, some of the popular ones are the MD, the Doctorate of Medicine, which is for people who want to become medical doctors, the PsyD, the DRPH, the EdD. These are professional doctorates. So they're really kind of geared to people, not who are people who are doing research per se, but people who are going to go into professional leadership tracks. Likewise, the JD for law school is a professional degree training you to become a lawyer. The MBA, a really popular professional master's degree, the Master of Business Administration. Lots and lots of people do an MBA. You're not typically going to find assistantships or full funding in the MBA programs. Also, there's lots of professional masters, like the Master of Public Administration. Master of Arts programs could be professional or research-based, so it's not really easy to tell just by looking at the type of degree, but there is a lot of professional masters that are not geared toward research. Also, online programs of any kind, even research-based programs, typically do not offer graduate assistantships because they're jobs. So if you are studying remotely a lot of these schools will not give these part-time jobs to people who are out of state, who are not on campus. So that's why online programs are typically virtually always paid for out of pocket. Also, part-time programs are geared toward working professionals. So they don't typically offer assistantships. If you're working full-time, going to school part-time, there's an assumption there's not going to be time for an additional 10 to 20 hours per week of support to faculty, right? So these are all the types of programs that typically do not offer funding. But if you were thinking about any of these degrees, hold tight, stay with me. I'm going to show you how you can find an alternative that could offer funding. Now, degrees that can offer full funding are the PhD. So the Doctorate of Philosophy is a research-based doctoral degree, and it exists in virtually all of the disciplines that you see the professional doctorates in. So rather than an EdD, a Doctorate of Education, you could do a PhD in education. Rather than a PsyD, Doctorate of Psychology, you could do a PhD in psychology. So whatever discipline you were looking at, look at the PhD version of that degree. Also, for anyone who's thinking about medical school or law school, you might not be aware that the joint programs with the PhD often offer full funding. It's supposed to say joint, not joint. Joint. So the joint PhD MD is a joint degree that is actually, yes, it's more geared toward people who want to become medical scientists and do medical research. So it's not so much geared for people who want to become medical doctors, but often these offer full funding. So at the end of it, if you wanted to go into becoming a medical doctor, you do have an MD. So it's not impossible to do the joint research focused program, get your full funding, and go on to become a medical doctor. Same thing for the joint PhD JD. Law school, the average amount of debt that a law school graduate will have is $180,000. So you better become a lawyer, a well-paid lawyer when you're done. If you're thinking about a JD for any other field other than becoming a practicing lawyer, I would say reconsider your degree. You could do the joint PhD JD, which is, again, geared toward people who are going to be in academia or doing scholarly research in the field of law. But again, at the end of it, you have a JD. So there's not really anything stopping you from going on and becoming a practicing lawyer. At the master's level, it's a little harder to find what's fully funded and what's not just based upon looking at the degree. You have to really look more deeply at these degrees to see which ones are more professional and which ones are more research-based and offer assistantships. So Master of Science programs often offer assistantships. They may be research-based. Master of Arts, again, they could be either professional or research. We don't know. You have to look deeper. There's Master of Public Policy programs that are more research-based. Master Public Health programs that are more research-based. So at the master's level, you really have to look more closely to see. Now, what is a research-based degree? It's typically a degree that's going to offer coursework in research methods and may culminate in a research thesis. So whether you're doing that at the master's or the PhD level, there's some sort of research thesis. So that's an indicator this is a research degree. But I'm actually going to show you today how to find master's programs that offer this type of funding through the assistantships in your discipline. So it's not going to be easy just looking at the title of the master's degree. The other exciting thing is that these aren't per se research degrees, but the Master of Fine Arts, which can be a terminal degree in the field of fine arts, often has full funding. So yes, there's a whole bunch of non-funded MFA programs, but good news is there's lots of fully funded MFA programs as well. Lots of my students have been able to get into fully funded MFA programs. So if you're thinking about the fine arts, and that can be in writing, visual arts, theater, filmmaking, all of those fields, there are fully funded versions of that, but you have to look more closely. Key takeaway, consider pursuing a research-based degree rather than a professional degree to be eligible for these graduate assistantships, which are the full funding, the full tuition waiver, and the annual stipend. All right, let's get into the strategies on how to find these master's and PhD programs that offer full funding, or AKA these graduate assistantships. Now, sometimes the full funding is an assistantship, which is the part-time job. Some of these programs also just offer named internal fellowships. So you might have a no strings attached full funding award as well, where you just get the funding. Let's talk about how to find these. So number one, I do want to mention as a quick start, if you've never used the profellow.com database, we have a free database. You go to our website, and sign up for a free account. Just so you know, we do not sell people's personal data like other scholarship engines. When you come in, it's only used to help you find programs for you and your profile. So inside, we currently have more than 1,000 fully funded PhD and master's programs listed. But I want to mention that this database, you can definitely use it to get started. But I want to mention that this is not all of the programs. Sometimes people use the database and they say, well, I didn't find anything in this subfield, or I only found 2 in this discipline. I want to tell you, this is not all of the programs. We are literally adding programs every month. Also, sometimes programs change their funding, so some things could be out of date. So this is just a quick start. The purpose of today's workshop is to show you how to find programs even beyond the database, okay? But you can use the database as a quick start. It's a great resource. So let's start with search strategy number 1, Google keywords. Now, at the PhD level, where most of the full funding can be found, you can Google the word PhD plus your discipline, and then in quotes, put full funding or fully funded. So if you were, for example, looking for a PhD in urban studies, you would Google PhD urban studies, and then in quotes, full funding. And you might have to try a couple different terms. All right. Now, it's going to look a little different these days. In the last 5 years, there's tons of advertising that's trying to key in on these keywords that we kind of coined early on. But when I first did this search, what you want to do is find those .edu websites. Those are university websites. So you see the first couple of links on here are .edus. These are from universities. You also, when doing these searches, you may find ProFellow articles. Click on those, use those. There are lots of lists that we have on our website because we've done some of this work for you. So you'll see in this list that we have a fully funded PhD programs and education list. If you see that, open it up, take a look. Those are not advertising. They're just links to our database. So take a look at that. So when I did the search, the first thing at the top was this priceschool.usc.edu. So I looked a little closer. And I'm looking at the USC Price PhD in Urban Planning and Development. And when I looked closely to find what they said about funding, it says incoming PhD students are fully supported for 4 years through a graduate assistantship that provides for tuition, stipends, and health and dental insurance. Students beyond the 4th year of study are often supported through teaching or research assistantships or funding from USC or other sources. So this is a fully funded program. And this is the type of terminology that you want to look for on the website. When they talk about fully supported, full funding, full financial support, or they just say we're supporting for X number of years, that is full funding, right? So make a note of that. If you wanted to find that program, put it into your workbook. Now, at the master's level, you have to use different terminology. Now, we kind of couch them as fully funded programs on ProFellow, but when you're looking at university websites, the master's programs, they don't typically say full funding. Master's programs may only give full funding to some students. If you want to get an assistantship, it might be a separate application process. It's less tied to the master's programs as it is to the PhD programs, but they are out there. So what you want to do at the master's level is Google the word master's, your discipline, and then assistantship. And I think you need to put it in quotes probably to get the best results. So again, let's say I was looking for the master's in urban planning. You would do master's urban planning assistantship. And when I had done this some time ago, I looked at this University of Illinois. They had a Master of Urban Planning, and they talked specifically about their assistantships. They said in recent year, the department has provided approximately 1/2 or more of qualified Master of Urban Planning candidates with financial support in the form of fellowships, teaching or research assistantships, often with tuition and fee waivers. So this means most of the students coming into this master's program are fully funded through the assistantship. So I would say, that would go up there. That's one of my top choices if I'm looking at the master's level. So just to recap, you have to do the search in a number of different ways. So one might not be enough, but again, at the PhD level, whatever your discipline is, if you're thinking of a doctoral degree, you'll do PhD in your discipline, and then try words like full funding, fully funded, full financial support. At the master's level, try the master's, the discipline, and then the word assistantships. And I want to mention, if you're looking at programs outside of the United States, sometimes they're called studentships or instructorships too. Assistantships is the common terminology in the US and Canada, but in other countries, it might be studentships or instructorships. So try them all, see what comes up when you do that. And I'm going to actually encourage you to do this in a minute here. Key tip, I want you to be open-minded about the type and discipline of your degree, because there's more options than you might think to achieve your career goals. I do recommend that, graduate school is something that you should do once you have kind of a somewhat clear idea of what you want to do career-wise. I don't really recommend graduate school if you're completely unsure what to do in your career. I think it's better to work a bit and kind of narrow it down. But, for the degrees, you'll notice that there's very few jobs that require a specific type of degree. Even in my field, when I worked in policy, they didn't say you must have a master in public health. It was more, any kind of master's related to public health probably would have been perfectly fine for my field. The only degrees that you need for specific career tracks, if you want to be a lawyer, you have to get a JD. If you want to be a medical doctor, you have to go to medical school and get the MD. Really, for virtually all other career tracks in government, nonprofit, corporate world, you don't necessarily need a very specific degree. So keep that in mind if you want to get full funding for grad school. All right, let's get your Google workbook. Now, this was emailed out in advance. If you missed the email or didn't get it, Elizabeth is going to be sharing it there. It's an Excel sheet, so that's sharing. If you can't download it, don't worry. Don't get hung up on that, because you can also just document into your computer what you're finding in the next couple sessions, and we can always get it to you after the event too. But there is a Google school selection workbook there. This is the same one that I use inside the fully funded course for students to help start to document the schools that they're finding. And what I want to do is have you do your Google search with the keywords. All right, so take a few minutes here, open up a tab on your computer. If you're looking at doctoral degrees, even if you were thinking about professional doctorates, I would say try this search, PhD, your discipline, and then words like full funding, fully funded, full financial support. You need to scroll past the sponsored content. Those are ads. A lot of them do not lead to information about fully funded programs. They're just using those ad keywords now. So try to scroll past things that say sponsored. I wouldn't click on those. Same thing at the master's level. Try the word master's and then the name of your discipline and then assistantships. Do that search now, and then I'd love to hear in the chat what you're finding. Now, you can't post links in the chat if you're trying to do that. Maybe just type in, hey, I found a PhD program at Columbia. I found a master's program at University of Iowa, in my field. If you found a ProFellow article, you've hit the cash cow. Go there first. There's probably at least 5 programs in the ProFellow list that you can start looking at. I'm going to hop over the chat. So I'm excited. I'll give you a few minutes here, but I'd love for people to try to find these different, what you're finding. Okay. Elijah says it's working. I don't know if you mean the Google search or the internet. So go ahead and see what you're finding. I'll give it a minute here. Sometimes the chat too is a little bit delayed. So I'll wait and see. I'm curious to see what you're finding. All right, people are starting to find a few things. So Cameron found a computational design PhD in Australia, offering funding. Awesome. All right. Tiba, if you want a literature degree, do the master's literature assistantships or PhD literature full funding. Okay, Johnny says I'm not finding much, but what is the discipline that you're using? All right, Haven found PhD and JD, the joint one at Berkeley, on jurisprudence and social policy, so that probably is fully funded there. Yeah, it's good to look for .edu websites. Those are university websites. Other things might be clickbait stuff. I would be careful. All right, Malcolm found the Johns Hopkins MPH Fellowship. Fantastic. All right, now, Johnny, post-colonial studies is a tiny subdiscipline of, you should look at larger disciplines. So it might be history. It might be, European history, American history. It's probably going to be under history or other types of, or art history. So just if you're looking at something that's very narrow, you have to often expand your discipline to a broader subdiscipline, right? So Johnny, try history for that PhD history full funding. And also keep in mind, subdisciplines like post-colonial studies could be called different things at different schools. They might have different terminology for that particular study. So just do that. All right. Stacy found University of New Brunswick, fully funded PhD in creative writing. Fantastic. All right. All right. And Richard said, I already found a long list of fully funded MFAs on ProFellow. Great. Elijah found neuroscience at Clarendon University. Fantastic. Princess found opportunities at Ball State University and Boise State University. All right. Yes, Melania, we do have fully funded PhD programs in African American Studies, and they have it at Cornell, Africana Studies at Brown. And note, see, that's an example of a discipline being kind of slightly different terms per school. So one school might call it African American Studies. Another school might call it Africana Studies. You have to make sure you're kind of not narrowing your words down too much. All right, Malcolm found the Michigan NIOSH Fellowship. Great. Maraka found the fully funded UCLA Archaeology Program. Awesome, awesome. Wow, okay, you guys put a lot of things into the chat. Oops. Hopefully, am I still here? Okay, it froze up for a minute. Okay, I'm gonna keep going because I actually still have a lot more to cover. Now you're gonna work on that. Now take a pause because I have to show you two other strategies. There is a big limitation with solely using Google keyword search. The biggest limitation of the past couple of years is there's a lot of clickbaity type stuff, number one. So there's a lot of advertising. There's search engines that are trying to sell display advertising. So be careful what websites you're using. That's why I'm saying look at the .edu websites or ProFellow. We are not clickbaity advertising websites. Look at those. But also keep in mind that if you only do the Google search, things might not show up that are available. Many universities are not going to have phrases like full funding on the website, even if they offer it. They might use a different term. I'm going to show you an example of this. So, you might miss out if you're only using these specific terms. Even if the phrase is on their website, it may not show up in your Google search, either because it doesn't rank high or there's some algorithm, or it could be on, page 20 and you can't find it. So I'm going to show you two other ideas. Now, for any university, if you have a top choice program and you're not sure if they offer full funding, you may have to inquire. It may not be clear on the website what is the funding offer. So don't be afraid to reach out to admissions and ask about full funding and assistantships and what's available. So let's say you're like, okay, I found a couple schools with this kind of quick Google search, but how can I find other ones too, like if they're not showing up in Google? Well, my second search strategy is using these ranking lists and going through them one by one. And if you need to, you may need to contact admissions to find more about the funding. All right, so I think some of you mentioned an interest in psychology for a degree. I want to give you an example of using a ranking list. So I had Googled it one time, PhD psychology rankings, to see if I could find a legitimate rankings list. Now, some ranking lists are advertising, be careful. This one was a .org website, socialpsychology.org. I think it's a legitimate organization. They are an academic association that had this ranking list. And as I'm looking at it, it looks probably about right. The top of the list is Stanford, then University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, Yale, UCLA. These are really top schools in the United States. So I was like, okay, this sounds about right. This is a relatively long list going all the way down. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to start looking at these schools one by one. I looked first at Stanford, which is number one on the list, and they have the PhD in psychology. And when I looked more closely at the funding information page, it said, to date, the Department of Psychology has been successful in providing financial support for graduate students in the form of a living stipend, tuition, and health insurance through spring quarter of their 5th year. This is a fully funded PhD program. And notice that they didn't use the exact term fully funded or full funding. So if you had relied on your Google search only, you might not have even found this program. And it's like the number one ranked in psychology, or at least it was at the time that I found that list. So that's why I say do the ranking list as well. And if you don't feel that you want to apply to like the top 5 schools in your field, these ranking lists, they usually go to 20 or 50 schools. So look at them all. Look at them all. There's going to be a lot of opportunities there. Also, I want to mention that funding is not limited to just the very top schools, like the Stanfords and Harvards. There's a lot of state schools and small schools that offer full funding as well. And actually, there's no guarantee, too, that a top school is going to offer funding. Sometimes the funding is in others. So there's really no correlation between, the reputation of the school and its funding. So I would look at all of the schools possible. Like I said, if it's not clear on the website, Ask admissions. All of these programs have an admissions email, contact page, info sessions. Go there and find out. This is important research to do. Okay, I'm going to talk about search strategy number 3, and this is specifically for PhD applicants. So if you were thinking about the master's, just listen through, because I think one day you might want to do a PhD. Some people do the PhD because they have a very specific dissertation topic of interest. And so when you have a really specific dissertation topic, sometimes people are like, well, this could fall under multiple disciplines or it's interdisciplinary. So they're not really sure. They start looking for schools based on discipline, when in fact, what you should be looking for are faculty advisors as your first point, if you have a very specific topic. So I'm going to show you how to do that now. All right, so how to research faculty using Google Scholar. I'm going to walk this through, and then I'll give you an example in real time. So Google Scholar is Google's search engine specifically for scientific journal articles, books, and other papers. So it's different than google.com. So you'll go to scholar.google.com to get into this this scholarly search engine. You're going to type in your research topic. You might need to rephrase it or use it in different ways to find the right results. Then I'm going to encourage you to filter the publications by year and do the past 5 years. You're going to get results with lots of older papers and books. Those might be important to read. They might be seminal studies, but what we're trying to do is find current faculty who are doing research right now in recent years on your topic. Then we can look more closely at the authors of the paper, and then we need to take a look, are these university faculty? Are they based at a university that has a PhD program? And then is that program fully funded? And so then that's what you're going to do, is do those next steps. Now, you can go quite down a rabbit hole on this result, but let me show you what this could look like if you're successful with it. Someone had written that they would love to do a PhD on father's influence on child development. All right, I'm going to come out of here. Hopefully I don't shut this whole thing down. I want to share, let's see, how do I go to slides? All right, stop the slide. And then I'm going to share, turn screen share on. I'm going to look at Google Scholar. Okay, hopefully that's working. All right, so we're going to look at father's influence on child development is the research topic. All right, so the first thing you want to do, as you can see, there's like 2004, 1977. These are older papers and books. So we want to look at the most recent years, like 2019 is the last 5 years. And then you can look through too. Now you'll see that these papers too are on all different subtopics beneath this. This one's in Chinese societies. This one's on feeding practices. I found this paper that was kind of a more broad paper. So I was like, okay, this is promising maybe for a PhD advisor. When you go here, you can look at the authors. So the first author is the person who led the study. So this is usually the best place to look. And when I looked here, I found Brenda Voling, who's a professor of psychology at University of Michigan. And also, too, when I'm looking at their papers, I'm like, okay, this is kind of in alignment with the type of research that I want to do. Now, if you click University of Michigan in Google Scholar, it's going to take you to like a Michigan page. I don't think you want to, this isn't going to help you. So actually what I do is I copy the name and the university, and then I pop that into Google. And then I found they have a page right here on University of Michigan. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to her page there. So I go in here and I see that they are a professor of psychology. That's a good sign there. It looks like they're tenured track because it's kind of under here. Tenured track faculty typically are advising PhD students if they have a PhD program. So the next thing I want to do, I'm thinking to myself, okay, this could be a great PhD advisor for my research topic. So now I want to find, do they have a PhD program? So I went to prospective students, and I found that they have an undergraduate, accelerated master's, and a doctoral program. So I go to doctoral. And so they do have the PhD. So they have a PhD in psychology. And then my next question is it fully funded? Now they have the page down here, financial assistance. All right, let's see what that says. And here it says the department offers a financial package that funds the 5 years that a student is in the graduate program. This is a fully funded PhD program, and now I've found a really great potential advisor for my specific dissertation topic on father's influence on children. So, and again, also notice this program too didn't use the specific term full funding or fully funded. I had to look more closely to see, does this offer full funding? And it does. They just say it in a different way. So I hope that was informative into how you can kind of find faculty and really find programs that offer full funding, because when you have a very specific topic, you really have to search programs by faculty, not by broad, disciplines, because that alignment with the faculty is extremely important for getting into a PhD program. All right, let me get back to Webinar Jam over here. All right, let me start my presentation. Thank God I haven't shut this down. All right, so hopefully that was helpful for those of you. Now, I just showed you 3 strategies, but I want to give some final advice. I personally strongly recommend that people apply, maybe exclusively to fully funded programs because of the student debt crisis in this country. However, it is possible that if you get into some fully funded programs, you could also apply to dream schools that maybe don't offer funding. So even some students in my program that are looking at the professional programs, JD programs, professional doctorate programs, in some cases, if they apply to a series of schools, some of which that offer full funding, if you get into multiple programs, you can often negotiate your funding to the non-funded programs. They may have some funding and they may reserve it for some special students. So if you're a competitive candidate, you might be able to negotiate funding if there is some there for them to distribute. So that's why I say it's good to apply to at least 5 programs, which is why I wanted you to find at least 5 today. You really, hone in on the fully funded programs so you can graduate without student debt. But, if you do have a dream school, maybe it's an MBA program, a law school that doesn't offer funding, still include it in there, because you never know what could be negotiated by the end. Now, just to recap the 3 strategies that I taught. Number 1, you can start with just that simple Google search using keywords like full funding, full financial support, and assistantships. And when you do that, look for those ProFellow articles. Those could be helpful. Use the profellow.com database as well. Google search strategy number 2 is to get the ranking lists and then look at each individual school and see what they say about funding and inquire with admissions when you need to. And then Google search strategy number 3 for the aspiring PhD applicants is to use Google Scholar to find faculty who have published recent papers in your topic of interest, and then looking more closely to see if they're based at a fully funded PhD program. All right, so that was a lot. Tell me in the chat, after using these 3 strategies or learning about them, what do you think about the possibility of fully funding your graduate degree? Has this helped at all? Is it useful? Do you feel more confident that maybe you could find a fully funded program or 5 or more? Tell me in the chat, what do you think? All right, people are saying this is insightful, informative, great. Kim Friedman said, great information. Ahmed said, very helpful. Good. This is all the information I wish I had known early in my career, so I could have avoided taking out all that student debt for my master's. I think this is why I'm so passionate about sharing this information. Great, people are feeling more confident. Awesome. Yes, great. So now you're going to have a list of schools that offer full funding. I'm going to talk, I can answer some questions too. Now, full funding, again, is the tuition waiver and the stipend. There is could be other expenses. So it's not completely 100% free in some cases, but certainly getting into a fully funded program is better than paying for a degree out of pocket, which is going to cost tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? So think about, targeting these fully funded programs. Good. Everyone's like feeling helpful, informative. Awesome. All right. I still got more to cover. Let me keep going. Let's talk about how to be a competitive candidate for fully funded graduate programs. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. As you probably have guessed, if a program offers full funding, it's going to be quite popular and attractive. It's actually, there are, competitive non-funded programs, but the fact of the matter is it's not as hard to get into a non-funded program. And in fact, in the world of graduate school today, a lot of schools are selling graduate degrees. There's programs that have 100% acceptance rates. So if you really want to get a graduate degree, you can actually pay and get one. I'm really all about, getting into a fully funded program for 2 reasons. Number 1, you could get your degree without student debt. And then 2, the fully funded programs are considered prestigious. They're going to help you get into your career track. And when you graduate, you won't have that student debt that will kind of narrow what type of jobs that you want to do post-graduation. So let's talk about how to be a competitive candidate. The good news is that acceptance to graduate school is not an award for your previous grades and your top and having top test scores. Acceptance into these schools is an investment into your potential. Now, I talk about that the school, this funding comes through a graduate assistantship, and I've mentioned that this is a job. So they're hiring these graduate students, they're paying you to go to graduate school so that you can support. Hi, can you guys hear me? Oh my God. Hi guys, I'm so sorry. My internet just went out. Oh my goodness. Elizabeth, can you hear me? See, even in the US, we have internet problems. Okay, so, all right, I think I'm back. I was going to talk about, okay, good. All right, sorry guys, sorry that I blipped out. Luckily, Elizabeth is here. We've been able to stay on, okay? So let me talk about acceptance to graduate school. So acceptance to graduate school is not an award for previous grades. There are really distinct elements that distinguish a good application from a truly great application. And this is what I call the match me formula. Now, over the years, from early in my life, I've always been quite good at developing a strong application, despite having some challenges in my academic background, not being a good test taker. I'm a good storyteller, and I love to teach storytelling in the application. But I've also interviewed now thousands of people who have won fellowships, who have gone to top graduate schools. And so through those, I realized that there were some key things that the multi-award winners are doing. And I call it the 7 elements of a winning application. So just to create an easy framework around what these elements are, I call it the match me formula. Each letter stands for a key element in your application. So I'm going to tell you what the match me formula is right now. So number 1, to get into a competitive program, your application needs to be memorable. These selection committees are reading hundreds, if not thousands, of applications. So your application does need to have a story that stands out. Number 2, it needs to align with the program's mission. So you need to do, quite a bit of background research on programs to understand how you align yourself with not just your goals, but their goals. Number 3, it should be timely and urgent. So there should be a reason why you need this graduate degree right now and not in a year or 5 years from now or ever. Number 4, your application should capitalize on the program's unique benefits. Number 5, your application should be highly specific. Now, this can be really hard to do when you have limited word counts, but there are a number of ways to be really strategic and create really specific information for the application and really cull out all that other stuff that doesn't matter. Number 6, your application should be mutually beneficial. So you should be talking about why it's not just beneficial to you, but beneficial to others. And number 7, it should be elegant, which is that careful balance of self-confidence and humility. You don't want to be going too far into the realm of overstating your accomplishments and inflating those, but you also don't want to be too, undercutting what you have achieved. You have to find a really good balance there. So this is what I call the match me formula. And people that get into these really competitive, fully funded programs really can nail all 7 of these elements. Some key tips for using and applying the Match Me formula and getting into these fully funded programs. Number 1, you do need to choose programs that are suited to your background and to your career goals. So it's not just about the past, it's also about the future. And a lot of times we pick programs that aren't really a good fit, or we're trying to, put a square peg into a round hole, as I say. So you do want to choose programs. There are thousands of fully funded programs, right? So it does take a bit of research to kind of narrow down to the ones that are really suited to you. And I don't just mean academically, but also personally. You want to make sure you're going to schools that are supportive of who you are and your identity. And that includes whether you're an older applicant, a BIPOC applicant, a female applicant, or any other factor. You want to make sure that you want to get into a school that's really suited to you. Secondly, it's really critical that you speak to faculty and admissions representatives before applying. I would tell you probably more than half of applicants do never talk to anyone on the admissions admissions thing. That's a big mistake. Number 3, you got to prepare tailored applications. Repurposed personal statements and research proposals are a sure way to fail. All right, so you want to make sure that you're tailoring all of your applications, including your CV, to each program that you apply to. Number 4, find a positive mentor with experience in academia. Now, just because someone has a PhD doesn't necessarily mean that they are experienced in guiding other people into getting into PhD programs. And also, they could have gotten their PhD many years ago. You really want to work with someone who has their pulse on academia and what they're looking for, but also someone who's going to root for your success and is not going to tell you to go to safety schools and to aim lower, right? That's what I mean by positive mentorship. And then finally, surround yourself with a supportive community. A lot of high achievers really hide their goals from others. You know, they're so afraid of failure. We sometimes don't want other people to know that we're applying for like a really top school, but you actually can really hold yourself back mentally and in the application process by not really surrounding yourself by people who are aware of your goals, can cheer for you, can support you, and also even working side by side with people who have similar goals. If you can get this, it's going to be a huge advantage to your applications. I'm going to take some questions at the end of this. I do want to tell you a bit more